against the Rams last week, but there's much to come. We're going to give our midseason grades. I got my guy Jack with me right after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. We've got my guy Jack here with me on this fine Thursday evening talking about the 49ers. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. A fun, busy day today. A lot of shows, but that's the beauty of 49er football on a bye week. So I'm excited about it and definitely excited to chop it down with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. It's the bye week has been good. It allows me to at least get a little bit of rest, but it's still been busy at the same time. I'm going to do a couple different things in terms of the writing and the channel. So looking forward, though, to come here and talk some 49ers with you. Yeah,
definitely. Before we start, as always, got to give a shout out to the guys that came in. Raphael 5629ers, a guy who always pops into the channel. So thank you for tuning in, as well as my main guy, RSF 49ers. Raj, thank you for tuning in as well. Starting off with the 49ers, Jack, just wanted to get your quick thoughts before we get into the premise of today's show. Wanted to ask you, what did you kind of take away from this past weekend's win?
That the 49ers are they dominate the Rams. That they feel very comfortable against the Rams, and that's what I take away from it. It looked like that whole game looked like they knew what was going to happen before it happened.
Yeah, I mean, that game was a very interesting game, right? Like you always see the 49ers express dominance against the Rams. In that first half, you were a little wary maybe. 49ers down 14-10 at halftime. Then came all the tweets about how Kyle Shanahan's whatever when losing at halftime. But then the 49ers kind of got it together. 31-14 win, a dominant second half, one of the cleanest halves of football that they've played thus far. So that was a good win for the 49ers, and now they head into the bye week at 4-4 with an NFC wildcard spot at the moment.
Yeah, right there. Well, right now they are right. They're in the seventh seed, and it's set up to be an interesting second half. You know, you look at the schedule ahead for the 49ers, and if they can clean some things up and start to show some consistency, they can make a run here in the second half and win a bunch of games and really change where they are in this race.
Yeah, no, definitely. And speaking of that second half, let's real quick just focus on what the 49ers have done thus far. You saw the title, midseason grades for the 49ers. So guys, today me and Jack are going to break down every position on the team and give you guys our grade at the midseason mark of what that position group has done. So Jack, without further ado, let's start with the most important position in all of football, your favorite position, the quarterback. Grade what's been your grade for the quarterbacks thus far?
I thought you were going to say long snapper. I thought that's where you were going with this, but
no. So I wasn't talking about the position that you played. Obviously, you're not a good football player. You only can get relegated to long snapper. I meant the quarterback.
Well, long snapper is kind of like a quarterback. You're just throwing the ball between your legs. But
that's true.
The quarterback for me, I've got the quarterback getting a grade of a B. You know, you look at that. You go back through this year. Trey Lance started off week 1. Struggled a little bit there, you know, had a couple of touchdown passes I think that could have been. One of them he missed, the other one he didn't throw and took a sack instead. Threw an interception, and then the downpour happened, and at that point it was kind of out of his hands. So he was around 50% at that point. Led a field goal drive on the first possession, week 2. Then he breaks his ankle. He's out for the season. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in, and Garoppolo's been pretty much who he's been the entire time he's been here, which is a guy who is – he's going to be in that B to C range, maybe even a C- at times, but right. Most of the time he's an above average to above average. So, I'm going with a B here just because there's a number of categories in which he's a top 10 quarterback in terms of stats. And you look at those numbers that he's put up and the fact that the 49ers passing offense has been pretty good. I give him a B.
I think I'm in a similar boat. I'm going to go one notch down. I know you're normally the negative Nancy. Unfortunately, that's me today. I'm going to give the group a B-. You talked about Trey Lance. Game one was a struggle. 13 of 28, 164 passing yards, had the interception as well. Not that great of an offensive performance, but I really liked what the 49ers offense had in Trey Lance's performance in week 2, specifically on the ground and the way that it was able to facilitate that running game. Garoppolo came in, did not like his Denver performance at all. I thought that was arguably his worst performance as a 49er. And after that, you've slowly seen him start to get into a rhythm. And we saw what happened when Garoppolo got into a rhythm last year when the 49ers had that strong stretch in the second half. And remember, Garoppolo getting into a rhythm does not mean he's Patrick Mahomes. Don't take that, like, when we say positive compliments, don't take it too far necessarily, but you can't discount what Garoppolo has done. I think I've been a little more impressed than expected this year with Garoppolo's performance. He's the same quarterback. He will have turnover-worthy plays, but I've liked the way that he's been a little more aggressive. Perhaps that comes with a contract year. And I've liked the way that he's approached this season in general. I liked what I saw in the second half against the Rams, and that he was a lot more patient. You saw Christian McCaffrey get 8 targets. A running back never has gotten, 9 targets. A running back hasn't gotten that many targets in the offense. What does that mean? He went through his progressions to hit that 4th guy. So I've seen glimpses of Garoppolo be able to go through his progressions, which hasn't been the case always. And I've seen him throw the deep ball at a higher rate. I think his big time throw percentage still stands around 5% on the year, one of the top marks in football. So you're going to get the bad with Garoppolo. That's certainly going to happen. But I've liked what I've seen in the good from Garoppolo, which is why I'm giving the grade a B- right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I would go in that range. Like I said, it's and I agree with you too. The Denver game I think was probably his worst game as a member of the 49ers. So but you look at that was also start one. You also have to look at Denver, the defense in Denver too. Look at what Garoppolo did against them and then compare what a guy like who they're going to play when they come out for their bye week, Justin Herbert. Look what Justin Herbert did against the Denver Broncos. His numbers weren't all that different from Garoppolo's, except for he didn't step out the back of the end zone, which is a big deal. But you know, it's you look at it, and Garoppolo is who he is, and you look at moving forward for the rest of this year, and it's going to be interesting to see if what we saw in Los Angeles can translate to the rest of the season. Because if it does, I think the 49ers are in a really good spot here.
Exactly. And the group of playmakers around Garoppolo make it so that Garoppolo doesn't necessarily have to be a hero. He hasn't had to play that hero ball role in San Francisco. And that, in a way, has limited the chances of turnovers, which is the biggest flaw that he's had in his career. He's been a turnover-prone quarterback, which has erased the positive plays that he's had in his career, and the turnovers have come at inopportune times, hence the Chiefs game. But Garoppolo, if he can continue to maintain this level of consistency, at least that what he showed in the Rams game, show these glimpses that he won't be a detriment to the offense, but rather can carry this offense to where it can place the ball in playmakers' hands, it's a good sign for the 49ers.
Yeah, and that's it too, because you know with we're going to get to the running backs in a second, so that's why I haven't gone there. But you know, I think that the change that they made recently, it really plays to his strengths now, and it'll play to this, you know, to helping out Trey Lance next year if he's the starting quarterback as well. So definitely, I think they've made some moves that are really going to help them out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like you said, let's get to them running backs, because that's been a different position, a little bit of different in terms of efficiency this year for the 49ers. Obviously, the 49ers have been a run-dominant team in years past. Hasn't always been the case this year. You've seen games where they've thrown substantially more than they've run. What's your grade for the running backs this year?
I give the running backs a C. So this is, you know, you look at this one, I think you have to look at remember, we're not talking about running back, we're talking about running backs. So if we want to talk just about Jeff Wilson Jr., I say it's a B. If you want to pair Jeff Wilson Jr. and Christian McCaffrey, it's still probably around a B plus at this point, because McCaffrey's only played one full game. I know he played the whole game against 2 weeks ago against Kansas City, but he was limited in what he could do. So we haven't really seen enough of it. But you know, you look at the numbers that they put up, and it was pretty much Jeff Wilson Jr. and a wide receiver, and then a bunch of guys who weren't getting the ball. So the 49ers run game right now is right in the middle of the pack. They're I think 17th in the league in yards per attempt.
Yeah, so it's not great. Yeah,
I think C is accurate for them. But the other piece of this is, like I said, Christian McCaffrey is here now, and if he can continue what we've seen him do so far, the limited amount we saw of him against Kansas City, what we saw of him against the Rams, if he can continue that throughout the rest of the season, and then you add in Elijah Mitchell, who looked really good in the week 1 game before he hurt his knee, you put those two in the backfield, and if they can stay healthy, I think the grade on this group really changes over the second half of the season.
I think that's a good analysis. My grade for the running back group is a C plus, a little higher, but Jeff Wilson Jr. was that number one guy in the offense. And unfortunately, Jeff Wilson Jr. didn't play bad necessarily, but I just don't think he can be the number one guy given his limitations in his skill set. He's not the quickest running back, which eliminated the outside zone opportunities for the 49ers, which made the offense one-dimensional and making it tougher, obviously, to defend when players are crashing down the box, understanding the 49ers are going to run some version of an inside zone play. And so to me, Jeff Wilson Jr., solid back, has had solid stats, averaging 5.1 yards per carry, but could not really be that number one guy. That's why the efficiency for the 49ers significantly deteriorated when it was him and Jimmy Garoppolo this season. 49ers are averaging under 4 yards a carry since week 3 in that week 3 to week 6 stretch when they were kind of struggling offensively. Now, the integration of Christian McCaffrey has done wonders for the 49ers offense. We saw it this past week. McCaffrey is definitely going to take this offense to next heights, and it also could improve Deebo Samuel's efficiency, who, apart from the 51-yard carry that he had against Chicago, has rushed for under 4 yards a carry as well after rushing for 6.5 yards per carry a season ago. So I think it could do wonders. I do expect this grade, definitely with Elijah Mitchell as well, to return. This grade should go up, but at the moment, it's been a significant reason why the 49ers have also struggled in offensively this year, because the running game was supposed to be a huge part of the attack, and it's seeming like the passing attack has been the better part of the 49ers offense thus far.
Yeah, that's correct. I agree with your the whole thing, everything you just said right there.
And because of that, we'll move on to the wide receivers, a position where we've had a solid amount of talent now, right? We have Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Ray McCloud. What's your analysis on this group thus far?
You know, the wide receiver group, I came in with a C, not a B, excuse me. B's too high for this group. I came in with a C.
Okay.
They would probably get a B if they weren't leading the league in drops. Mm-hmm. But they lead the league in drop percentage. Primarily, that's coming from Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings, who have 12 between the two of them. But when you're dropping the ball as much as they are, it's hard to really put them in a spot above average. I know. Again, I talked about the net yards per pass attempt where they are as a team, the 49ers. So they obviously play a role in that. So you take their ability as receivers, and it's probably a B plus, but then you look at all the drops, and that's a D. So I put that's why I come together with a C grade. It's just, again, in the first half, too many drops. If they can get rid of that as they move forward, it'll be better. And, the 49ers' best offensive performance of the season came without the two guys that dropped the ball the most. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out moving forward.
That's fair. I have a little bit of a higher grade. I'm going to give the group a B minus, and that's because of the emphasis towards Brandon Ayuk, who I think is having a very, very solid, underrated season this year for the 49ers, establishing himself as the potential wide receiver 1 this year for the 49ers. Ayuk has 483 yards on the season, and when you look into the numbers, he consistently gets open, has good hands. He has the best hands on the team right now, and he also is just a good overall wide receiver. But like you said, I can't give the grade higher because not only does Deebo Samuel have a drop issue, but Juwan Jennings has a big drop issue as well. And on top of that, the 49ers offense coincidentally has struggled in a way to generate big plays. What do I mean? On those 50-50 balls, you've seen the 49ers consistently miss. Ray McCloud has dropped a couple of passes on bigger plays. Deebo Samuel has as well. Brandon Ayuk has struggled to come down with some of the bigger plays as well. And so to me, that also knocks down the grade a little bit. I do, though, give a little bit of praise, obviously, to Samuel's yards after the catch ability. A huge portion of his yards this year, I think it's 288 of his 387 yards are after the catch this year. He's been utilized in a bit of a different role. His yards per target, like air yards per target, is around only 4 or 5. it's a lot of after the catch for Deebo Samuel this year. So that's where I do think the grade bumps up a little bit. But in a way, it's been a relatively disappointing performance up to expectations from the position group.
Yeah, you need to give them the credit for the yards after the catch. I think they're number one in the league in yak yards.
Yeah.
But the thing is with this group, and it's not, I don't think this is any different than it's been in years past. It's top heavy, right? You have Ayuk and Samuel, and then you have Jennings. Those are your top three. And then you'd have nobody who has more than 10 receptions. Everybody's below 10 other than that in terms of the receivers. Christian McCaffrey's been here for 2 weeks. He's already over 10. McLeod has 9. He'd be at 10 if he didn't drop one. And Juwan Jennings, he's got 15 targets. 24 targets, 14 catches, but he also has 5 drops. Just imagine the numbers that this offense would put together if these guys weren't dropping the ball.
No, definitely.
And also, drops, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I should have also added in, Danny Gray as well. Danny Gray, rookie 3rd-round draft pick.
Has been disappointing this year as well. Yeah.
He can barely get on the field, and he has 6 total targets through the first 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, he has been pretty much an afterthought to the point where we both didn't have him in our initial analysis. So that's that for Danny Gray. But overall, the 49ers receivers, I'd expect a little bit of a better second half. You normally think that these drops can normally regress to the mean, but it is players that have had drop issues in the past. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But moving on to the tight end group, a group that obviously prefaced by George Kittle, but the 49ers have interestingly had 4 tight ends this year on the 53-man roster with Kittle, Warner, Dwelly, and Tyler Kroft. What's your evaluation of that group?
Yeah, I think this group, I'm giving them a C+. I'm giving a little bit higher than the wide receivers. And I think, part of that is because I think both the wide receivers and tight ends do a good job of blocking. Tight ends are obviously more impactful in the run blocking than receivers, or they're more involved, I guess I should say, because of their alignment in the scheme of things. And the reason they get a C+ instead of a C, though, is because they don't have the drops quite as much, right? Other than one guy, Charlie Warner, who has, I think he's from Stonehenge, because that's what his hands are like. He's had 2 targets, 2 deep balls, both of them bounced off of his hands. Other than that, the tight ends don't have any drops. George Kittle's been George Kittle. He's among the best top blockers in the league. We've seen him come on in the last few weeks since everybody got up in arms over his lack of targets. Those targets have increased the last 3 weeks, so that's been good for my fantasy football team. Good for the 49ers too. And then also Ross Dwelly and Tyler Kroft. I think they're 2 guys who are a little underappreciated or undervalued. They're just not getting, they're a good tight end 3 players, right?
Yeah.
The only reason they're tight end 3 is because of the blocking. I think really, I think that you should have both Kroft and Dwelly competing for that tight end 2 spot.
Yeah, I think that your analysis is good, and coincidentally, I have the same grade. I am giving the tight ends a C+ this year. Kittle has been all right. He obviously had a slower start, but you don't normally attribute that to Kittle. It was just the way that he was utilizing a bit, and it's fine, because to me, I didn't have really a problem given how impactful he was in the running game. Kittle and Warner have been good blockers in the running game this year for sure. I think that part of their game goes understated, and really that's the only part of Warner's game, because he can't catch. So that's a huge element of Kittle and Warner's game, and I think that has gone understated. In the receiving game, though, obviously Kittle now is the 3rd leading receiver for the 49ers, 319 yards on the year, and he has the 2 touchdowns. Coming along a little more, I expect a better, more consistent kind of games from Kittle over the next couple of games, or over the second half of the season. Dwelly, limited opportunity, done well with a limited opportunity. Warner, limited opportunity, done poorly with a limited opportunity. You balance it out, you get a little bit above average in general. And like you said, Tyler Kroft, probably underrated at the moment, but can't get on the field, had the MCL injury. And so we'll see what his role potentially could be if they could eclipse Charlie Warner on the depth chart.
Well, and this is real quick, since we're on tight ends, I think, we were talking about, you mentioned Christian McCaffrey and his, impact possibly on Deebo Samuel. I think since we're talking about tight ends, we need to talk about the impact that Christian McCaffrey's already shown on George Kittle. I think you look at the 2 of them, on Sunday, there was a number of times where they're aligned on the same side of the field together, and you're seeing one guy open up the other, whether it's Christian McCaffrey pulling the coverage down, which is opening up Kittle down the field for the shot down the seam on the left side, or for the touchdown as well that wrapped it up, or a couple of times where you see Kittle taking off down the field and pulling the linebacker all the way, and McCaffrey being able to easily make a catch and run after. So I think that's probably the combination that's going to be a lot of fun to see if that can continue on.
No, I do agree too, and I think that it'll help both players because both players obviously warrant enough attention and cause distractions alongside a defense. So definitely both players will have an impact, and that kind of goes back to the understated element where you're not going to see that on a stat sheet, you're not going to see that in a scorebook, but it's an element that will be helpful for both players, like on the film.
Yes, I agree. I think it's gonna. I'm really interested in seeing how this whole thing works out with McCaffrey, because I really liked him. I don't know if we've talked since. I know we talked prior to the trade, and I told you that that why I was excited about it. But I just see a guy who fits perfectly with the 49ers do, and I have zero problem with all the draft picks that they gave up to get him, because
100%
they weren't going to get somebody in 2, 3, or 4 of next year's draft that's going to give them a productivity that Christian McCaffrey will give them.
Right. And even if it did, it's unlikely that it happens during the window that the 49ers want. This window is in the next 2 to 3 years. I didn't have a problem, just given that the player is good, the contract is good, the fit is good, and the draft capital isn't as much when given the amount of draft picks that the 49ers do have in the mid to late rounds in the next 2 years as well.
Correct.
Moving on to the offensive line. A polarizing group, a group that received a lot of criticism at the beginning of the year. I don't know your opinions on them at the beginning of the year. I personally believe that this was going to be a top 16 unit after what I saw in training camp, just because I thought they'd develop. What's been your evaluation thus far?
They've been everything that I thought they were going to be. I thought that Aaron Banks was going to be just fine at left guard. I know I heard earlier today where John Lynch had some questions about it or some concerns, but I thought he was going to be really good. Based off of everything I saw in his film during college, and then what I was seeing from him during training camp, especially when he had the starting left tackle next to him, which wasn't very often throughout much of camp. The surprise, Jake Brendel at center, kind of the same thing. I thought, you look at his numbers and from his scouting combine, and there were numbers that really match what the 49ers like to do in terms of his quickness and his short area movement and athleticism. So I thought he was going to fit in okay. And we've seen him be, for the most part, he's okay. Every once in a while he gets blown off the ball. But for the most part, he's solid. And then at right guard, they moved on from Daniel Brunskill still on the team, and it's been Spencer Burford, which was a little bit of a surprise there, but that's also because Brunskill got injured. So he stayed there at right guard the whole way through training camp, and he's looked okay, and he's been splitting time with Brunskill over the last few weeks. And so I think that interior of the offensive line has been, which I think is where most of the concerns were, has been pretty much non-existent in terms of the concerns with them.
Yeah.
And then Mike McGlinchey's been what Mike McGlinchey's always been, and Trent Williams has been what he's always been. So overall, I give him a B. The other thing, too, with this offensive line, the 49ers quarterbacks, say what you want about all these guys individually, the 49ers quarterbacks have been pressured the fourth least in the NFL through the first 8 weeks of the season. It's like 16.4% of the time they drop back. So I think this might even be tied for third right in that, or fourth. I don't know what the number. Anyways, they're up at the top. And then in the run game, I know that I gave them a C for the running backs, but even in the run game, they're a little higher than they were last year. They were at 4.5 yards per carry last season. Through the first 8 weeks, they're at 4.7. Yeah, and it's amazing how it improves when you get a top quality running back behind you.
No, definitely. What was your overall grade? I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry. It was I gave them a B.
Got it. Okay. I'm actually going a little higher then, because my grade for this group is a B+, and maybe that is jumping the gun a little bit, but based on the expectations, I thought that this 49ers offensive line was going to be good. they've been good thus far, regardless of what you want to say. Everybody sees the one clip maybe of Jake Brendel getting pushed, the one clip of McGlinchey getting pushed, and those two have been inconsistent at times for the 49ers. But I think the interior offensive line has been much better than many anticipated, especially at the guard position. Burford has settled in after, a little bit of inconsistencies requiring him to be shuffled in and out. Didn't like that move. But Banks has been solid all year. He's the second best offensive lineman on the team behind Trent Williams. And even Williams has gone through his sort of rough patches at times, but he's Trent Williams. He's going to be fine, and he looked fine in this past week. 49ers have been able to kind of gain that consistency, and the biggest question was cohesion. Could they gain the cohesion over the entirety of the year, and how quickly could they do it? I've been impressed by them. I think they've done very well compared to expectation in pass protection, and have been right where I believe that they would be in run blocking. So those are the two things. I think the 49ers overall, while there have been some execution woes, have been able to create enough holes in the running game. And I'm not going to discount 4 good performances when one person one person's bad play blows up a running play. So to me, that's why that grade is at a B+, because I think the individual performances have done well. Sometimes you've seen it as a unit, because one person doesn't do well on a certain play, that it falls apart. But I've liked what I've seen from the 49ers offensive line, and I don't think they're a reason why the 49ers have lost games this year.
I don't. Yeah, I think. Well, no, I don't think they're the only reason. We'll get into that when we get into the coaches. I think because they've been pretty good in their blocking. I think if you wanted to blame stuff on them, then you could blame some of the penalties, right? I mean, because they have been part. The 49ers offense is one of the 8th most penalized team in the NFL. Okay, on the offensive side of the ball, they're tied for 8th worst. So that's part of the reason why, when you look at the offense as a whole, the offense has they're below average, because yards are really good. They're 11th most in yards. That's good, but yards don't win games. Points do. And when you get the points, they are, I believe, 17th in points scored, 18th in points scored, right around there, so below average. Mm-hmm. And then you look at their points per drive, and that's 22nd. And so they're and that's coming from a lack of execution, and that's on the coaching staff, and that's penalties, that's fumbles, that's drive killers at times, that goes along with it, and also the drops. So
yeah, I think so. It's funny, because to me, I think the penalties and all, the reason that they get amplified is they come at inopportune times. So you can grade that as you will. I think there are times where the 49ers offensive line has faltered, where those penalties. One of the biggest examples, I know you've pointed out on the timeline several times, that Jake Brendel hold on that Brandon Ayuk throw, or Brandon Ayuk play in the Atlanta Falcons game in the 4th quarter with 7 minutes and 20 seconds left. Just one example in general, but overall, I think the unit has played pretty well.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Now, kind of going in a general sense for the offense, who's kind of your MVP of the offense thus far?
The MVP of the offense, that's a tough one. I think, you look through there, and probably I'd go with Brandon Ayuk would probably be the guy that I'd land on as the MVP if I was going to pick one for the offense. Beyond that, it's really tough. Jeff Wilson had a really good first half, but I wouldn't put him as the MVP. So it probably would go to Brandon Ayuk. Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't consistent enough. If he'd been playing a little bit better, he might even be in that category, but he's out of it. So I'm going to say Brandon Ayuk.
Cool. Yeah, I have that exact answer. I think Brandon Ayuk has been the MVP. I think it kind of boiled down to 2 players to me, Ayuk and then Aaron Banks. And that might be surprising, but to me, I think that key cog at left guard has been important. The only reason I go Ayuk over Banks is Banks obviously relies on the offensive line, which works as a unit. It's more so all 5 have to play well for the offensive line to be regarded as good. And so I think Ayuk's individual impact has been even more important. He's played a huge role for the 49ers, and really a key reason why they've been able to move the ball. Jack just pointed out the points per game and points per drive statistics. Well, one statistic that's important is the amount of yards that the 49ers are able to generate. And that's far better than, when you look at the amount of yards, you're surprised that the 49ers aren't able to score more points, because they just have been inefficient at times at certain points on offense. And so to me, I think a big part of why they've been able to move the ball has been Brandon Ayuk. He's my offensive MVP as well this year.
Yeah, because Ayuk's he's been very good. He's on pace for his best year.
Yeah, definitely. What about most improved player on offense?
Most improved player on offense, I think you go with Aaron Banks, just because we didn't see him last year, so he's the easy one to pick out. You would go in that direction, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment as well. Aaron Banks should be in the pick. Should be probably the pick itself. Everybody else, you kind of expected it, right? In the offensive group, you've seen some disappointments, obviously in the skill position group, but offensive line wise, he's that one guy that you're kind of looking to. Could be Jake Brendel as well, but I think Banks' impact has had a bigger magnitude. I think he's the pick as well for me.
There you go. I like that one.
Now, here's where Negative Nancy comes back.
Oh, no.
Who's been the disappointing player for you on the offense?
The most disappointing player on the offense, I think, just based off of where he was last year and what we've seen so far this year, I think the most disappointing player on the offense is Deebo Samuel.
Beautiful. That's who I had too. Okay.
I mean, you just look at where he was last year, right, and what he was able to accomplish and where he is right now. I think he's the most disappointing for sure.
Yeah, I think you have to go with that too. When you talk about it, Jack brought up the drops. He has a drop rate of 13% this year. I understand Jennings has a huge drop rate as well, but when you look at the role that he had last year, he was a multifaceted player because he could run the ball and he was a threat in the receiving game. Isn't really a threat in the rushing game anymore. Like I pointed out earlier, he's averaging under 4 yards per carry when you take away that one huge 51-yard run, and he hasn't been able to get separation that much. If you look at his separation statistics, yeah, they're fine, but that's because he's utilized a lot on these screen passes that are shorter in distance. So that's easier to get separation. When he's on the deeper routes, his separation numbers do decrease in general. And so his separation, in my opinion, is decreased. He hasn't been able to catch the ball consistently this year either. And so that drops his value as a receiver. And when that running back value hasn't been there this year because that's been neutralized, I think overall Deebo Samuel, compared to the amazing all-pro season that he had last year, I think he has in a way been disappointing for the 49ers.
Agree.
Moving on to the defense, let's start with the defensive line. Obviously a vaunted unit, but a unit that has faced some injury issues at times. What's your evaluation of them this far?
On the defensive line, I give them an A. You look at that group, and Nick Bosa, Samson Ebukam have been everything you expected. Eric Armstead, he doesn't have any sacks yet, but he was solid when he was in there until he got injured. Same thing with Javon Kinlaw. Sorry, I was just doing the hand thing, trying to remember the guy's name. And then the backups have all been, good. And so you look at it overall, and I think you got to give them an A because they've been excellent this year. And they've had a little bit of a downslide over the last couple of weeks, but that's mostly because of the backups have had to take extra reps. So I wouldn't argue with you if you came in and said it was an A- or a B+.
Yeah, I think right now I will still probably lean towards an A. It's between an A- and an A for me right now, just because there has been a bit of a backslide over the last few weeks. But when you look at the overall defensive line, I think the pass rushing numbers have been incredible. Obviously, much better in the first half compared to the second half. But I'm not trying to make a comparison, just making an overall statement. And I think overall, when you look at the numbers, they have been good this year. The defensive line continues to create pressure. You don't have just one guy making it. It's obviously Nick Bosa, but Samson Ebukam has 3.5 sacks. Charles Omenihu and Drake Jackson both have 3 sacks apiece. The pass rush numbers in terms of percentages in the pass rush win rate and the pass rush productivity have both been high for several players. Nick Bosa obviously playing at a near deep DPOY pace, if not the DPOY right now. So I think that there's been a lot of good talent on the defensive line. Yes, they got beat by Atlanta a good amount. Yes, they got beat by Kansas City in holding the edge. But I think the correct grade for me is an A.
There you go. Yeah,
Let's move to the linebacker.
Really,
yeah, go ahead.
Fun information.
Yeah, but let's move to
Go ahead.
linebackers, a position where the 49ers have done very well in terms of drafting, in terms of talent. One of the best linebacker groups that you could say in the NFL. What's your grade for them?
I think they get an A as well. Fred Warner's playing at a high level again this year. He looks really good. I think he's last year. It's funny because he was an All-Pro 2 years ago, wasn't an All-Pro last year. But I think you look at the numbers last year. The only difference was he didn't have the picks, right? The tackles and all that kind of stuff. Tackles for loss, I think, were all higher even than the year before. He just didn't have the interceptions, which get the highlight. So he puts you already in the B range. I think when Dre Greenlaw was healthy, that he moved you right up to an A. Greenlaw and Warner give you, I think, the best 2 linebacker combination in the NFL.
Yeah. Real quick, before I give my response, I did just see this comment from Mook DeVillen saying, "Salute, Jack. Do you think the 49ers should cut ties with Kinlaw? Something related to the defensive line. I think his injuries career threatening, to be honest." What's your takeaway on that?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where they are, right? We'll see where he progresses throughout this year. He's on IR right now. They can't bring him off. He's going to miss next week against the Chargers. He's eligible to come off after that. So we'll see what happens if he's one of the guys that they decide to bring back. If not, if they don't go in that direction, I don't think they're going to cut ties with him because that's just not the way the 49ers do business. They'll let him play this out. I just don't know if they'll pick up his 5th-year option. I think that's what you need to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I think that's true. They won't pick up his 5th-year option. I don't know what they'll do. I don't think they cut ties. I honestly think that there could be a chance they roll out with him for his 4th year as well because it's guaranteed money. I don't know unless if they can't find a trade partner. I don't think they will cut ties yet. His injury could be career threatening, though. That could be the case. I mean, Kinlaw's had the same issues kind of stemming the entirety of his career going back to college when he tore his ACLs. So hopefully he is able to come back. Hopefully he's able to overcome the injuries. Unfortunately, is looking bleak at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It is. It definitely is bleak. And, he worked hard. He did the surgery and it just isn't working out for him. So that's a bad deal.
Yeah. Rick Diaz says, I think it's the 49ers offensive line should be okay. I know one thing, we're not out of work yet. Number 3, every week is a challenge. Yeah, 49ers line has been doing good. Should probably continue to do good as they gain more cohesion along the second half of the year.
Yes. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens because they keep rotating that right guard spot. I wonder if Brunskill is going to take over after the bye.
Yeah, I do wonder that too because you get the extra week. I personally do think that it would be. Do you think that would be the right move? I wonder about you. There's issues. I watched, in watching the film, and there's some issues with Spencer Burford in the running game and in the passing game both. There's times when he's just not getting there, and I know that Brunskill has his issues as well. I think he might be a little bit better in the run game though. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's a close call. I don't know if there's a major difference between the two. And so I do agree with that.
If there's not a major difference between the two though, what I would say is you stay with the younger guy because you let him develop.
Yeah, I do agree that there isn't a bigger difference, and that's why I would stay with Burford. But if we are being honest, in all reality, I don't care who the starter is at the moment because I think it's not that far off as long as they stick with one player. I don't like the idea of rotating. I don't think it does. I think it does a disservice not only to that specific player, be it Burford or Brunskill, but also the remainder of the offensive line who has to kind of change their tendencies for to account for whoever's playing right next to them. So I think that's a thing as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Real quick, got to give a shout out to some of the other people that came in. Felipe De La Rosa, Niner Gang Wolfcast, Jesus here, as well as Lucas Pesci. Thank you all four for tuning in on this fine evening. But continuing,
it's got to be what right now? Like it's got to be about what 2:15 in the morning for Lucas right now because he's out in Austria.
He at?
He's in Austria.
Oh, yes. Snap! If he's tuning in at 2:15, yeah, he deserves a round of applause. That's definitely something crazy. I can't tune on at 2:15 for something like that.
He's a hardcore member of the Toolbox.
Odd Job here as well. Thank you for tuning in. He asks, "Are you still enjoying the excitement of Grand Mirths?" he's growing on me. I'll say that. That's some Wisconsin stuff out here. But let's get back on topic to the linebackers. You said that they deserve an A. I'm going to go a little more critical. I will give them an A- because I do think that 2-game stretch when Dre Greenlaw was out for a little bit, that 2-game stretch in between the season, between the Falcons game and between the Chiefs game, was a little bit of a downturn for the linebackers. Fred Warner didn't play his cleanest football then. Great bounce back though in week 8. To me, I don't think though it's about the 2 stars. I think more so it's about the backups, because the backups were having to play a little more. You've seen a little bit of Demetrius Flanagan-Fouts. He didn't play that great against the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion. And then you've seen a bit of Oren Burks, who has had his ups and downs as well. Pretty solid game this past week. I'm going to give him an A-. I still think that they've played stellar. Great play in the first couple of weeks of the year. But to me, yeah, I'll give him an A-. A is completely justified, though, I feel, as well.
Nice. I'm glad we agree.
Moving on to the final position, or actually, no, not final yet. We'll split it into 2. Let's talk about the cornerbacks. Cornerbacks, obviously, probably the position that has seen the most turmoil or turnover this year. What's your evaluation of them right now?
And the DBs, I've given them a B+. I think you look at them, I think they've been pretty solid. I know the game against Kansas City was as bad as it gets, but the game against Kansas City was as bad as it gets for all 3 phases of the defense, not just the DBs. So I give them a B+ though, because one thing is the safeties have actually got turnovers this year. Jimmy Ward, solid safety, but he doesn't get turnovers. He doesn't pick the ball off, doesn't really help force interceptions.
Right.
And he hasn't been playing. And in his place, you have Talanoa Hufanga and Tayshaun Gibson. And that duo, I think they have 4 interceptions combined between the 2 of them, which is more than the Friars have had in a long time. So
in a while, yeah, at the
yeah.
position.
And then you have Charvarius Ward, who's played at a high level for most of the season when he's been healthy, and Emmanuel Mosley was really good in the beginning, and Diamondor Lenore's replaced him. They've had a little bit of transition in at nickel, but for the most part, I think those guys have been pretty solid over there.
Yeah, I'm going with an A- again. Probably it'd be a B+ to an A-. I think I'm going to go with an A- because of how stellar the play was in the first few weeks of the year. Yeah, the nickelback did have Samuel Womack and Diamondor Lenore had some up and downs here and there, but I have liked the play from cornerbacks. I have even liked the play of Samuel Womack on special teams as a gunner. So yes, I'll attribute that as well. I think that the cornerbacks in the first 5 weeks when Mosley was there locked down some of the best cornerback play we've seen in the NFL thus far. A little bit shaky after that, right? Charvarius Ward had not a great game in week 7 when it seemed ailing from injury against the Falcons. Both the cornerbacks, when Charvarius Ward went out in the second half or in the first half, weren't great, dropping the grade. But overall, when we look at it, I do think the cornerbacks have done well, especially relative to expectations.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's pretty accurate right there for sure.
Yeah. I think since you just touched on the safeties, we can go straight to the MVP part, and we can talk about who do you think is the MVP of the defense thus far?
The MVP of the defense? That's Nick
This
Bosa.
is the toughest one.
Yeah, it's Nick Bosa.
This is a tough one.
He got an extra half of a sack today. The NFL made a change on one of the tackles, one of the sacks, and gave him a half a sack. So he is tied for the NFL lead at 8.5, which is pretty good when you consider he missed a game and a half so far,
right,
due to the injury. So Nick Bosa is your MVP on the defense.
Yeah, I think for defense, Nick Bosa has to be the pick because he is at least in the DPOY mix with the 8.5 sacks that ranks first in a lot of edge rusher, I guess I call him edge rusher statistics. He's first in those as well, so that's a good thing. But Fred Warner has been a guy who's played pretty well this year. He's a dark horse candidate as well as Charvarius Ward, just because the 49ers haven't had that level of cornerback play this year. I mean, in general. So that's another benefit. So those two are close candidates. I would say, though, it is Nick Bosa as well.
Good. See, you agree with me. I finally turned you around. You're finally coming to the
I muted you, by the way. I muted you, so nobody heard it. You said you're agreeing with me. No, that can't happen, Jack.
Well, see, there you go. You unmuted me now. So you finally have understood that I am the one who is correct and that you should follow my lead. I appreciate that.
Everybody here who follows Jack Hammer on Twitter, on YouTube, he's a fraud. Do not follow him. Do not go to the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Nobody writes there. Nobody knows what that is. Do not write. Do not go there. Never ever subscribe to Jack stuff. But no, talking real. Talking about the most improved player on the defense, who do you think that should be?
The most improved player on the defense. It's Talanoa Hufanga. Mm-hmm. Just from where he was last year, I think you saw glimpses of it, but he's been really good this year. I know there's some stuff out there with missed tackles, and that's definitely been a case. I saw one of them on Sunday, where it could have been a tackle for a short gain. It was a little bit longer earlier on in the game, but again, second-year player, plays at a high level. Definitely a big piece of their defensive success.
I think so too. Hufanga has to be there. I think the second in, or the guy who's running in second, is probably Charles Omenihu, who's primed for the breakout. I expected it, and he's done pretty well this year, kind of serving as a compliment to Nick Bosa. But Hufanga has been a game changer for the 49ers, especially when you talk about how he played last year in limited action, right? In I think it was week 9 against the Arizona Cardinals, where he was burnt at times when playing the deep end at safety. But a great year thus far from Hufanga, minus the missed tackles. That's been an issue at times over the last few weeks, but Hufanga has done a good job. And yeah, he's kind of ensured confidence in that safety position without Jimmy Ward.
There you go. I agree. That's a good one as well. And we also have Odd Job coming in with Diameter Lenore. I think he really likes him for the and I think that's to an extent that's correct. I think
case.
Diameter Lenore's really shown he's really stepped up, and I know the numbers don't look all that great with him, but I don't know, man. I thought he did a pretty good job against the Rams. When he was playing inside at the slot, and he was covered up a lot with number 10.
Cup.
Yeah. I don't remember the Rams getting into the end zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, even in week 4 when they were covered up, and Lenore was tasked to play all 74 snaps in that game, Cup had 14 catches, but for 122 yards with a very low ADOT. Overall, it was a pretty good game defensively to keep him to low, small gains every time.
Yes, agree. Mm-hmm.
What about the most disappointing player in the defense?
The most disappointing player on the defense, I think when you're looking at that, it would be the injury to Kinlaw. I think is what it's most disappointing, just because it could be between Kinlaw and Eric Armstead. Really, the injuries there have weakened them a little bit inside. I don't think it's been anything major, but still, you look ahead at what's ahead, and you're going to want to have at least one of those guys healthy when you get to Seattle on the 15th of December, because that's going to be very important.
You're right. I think for me, I'll go in a different direction, and that's because I don't want to place an emphasis too much on the injuries, especially the ones that have kept him out of games. Mm-hmm. But the player that I am picking has been injured a little bit as well, and that's Jimmy Ward. I think he, to me, will be, just because he's played out of position now for the last 2 weeks. I don't think he's as comfortable. He even acknowledged he's not as comfortable in this position as he is at free safety. I think because he's not able to use his hands to jam players at the line of scrimmage, one of the biggest facets of his coverage ability, because of that broken hand, because of the club, I don't think that he's been able to utilize his coverage ability to the best of his abilities. And that has limited him, because it's not like his traits are the reason why he's able to be such a good coverage player. It's because of his technique and his talent with his footwork and his hand placement. And so to me, that's where I think, because that's lacking right now, Jimmy Ward hasn't looked like the player that you might expect him to be, and also because he's playing out of position at cornerback. So to me, unfortunately, Jimmy Ward is probably that player for me.
Yeah, with Jimmy Ward, here's the thing: you got to go back, and he was a slot corner for early on in his career. In 2014, after he got drafted, Vic Fangio and Jim Harbaugh put him in there to get him on the field playing, as their starting slot. Struggled a lot, and it wasn't until the current regime came in that they put him back at safety, and they really liked him. And I remember after 17, there was thought that he was going to walk, and I was hearing how they really liked him and they re-signed him, and he's been really good in the back half. But Jimmy Ward's always struggled, whether he's playing corner or in the slot, against receivers. You look at 2019 and he was really good in the slot, but that was usually because he was matched up with tight ends. So I think it's different when you're guarding a tight end or a running back compared to the wide receivers. And he struggled, and there's no doubt about it. He struggled to the point where the Flyers coaches pulled him off the field against the Rams last week for a couple plays, and replaced him with Deommodore Lenoir in the slot and put Ambry Thomas out at cornerback. So,
right.
It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out, because he might be there the whole season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I do think that could be a possibility, especially if Jason Verrett does not return for the 49ers. And I hope that, especially when he comes back without the club, however long that they may be, that his coverage ability might be a little better, given that he can utilize his hands a little more. Obviously, that might result in a couple of more penalties, at least early on when he's trying to get back into that NFL kind of shape. But to me, yeah, Jimmy Ward, unfortunately, is that player for me. Kinlaw could be a guy. Armstead could be a guy because of the injuries and just because of how impactful they are in stopping the run and as pass rushers for Armstead's sake in that middle of the field.
Yes, I agree.
But hey, Jack, this was a fun show, a good 50-minute show talking about the midseason grades. Next week, the 49ers are going to play off against the Los Angeles Chargers, a chance to once again get past 500. We'll see if they have the ability to do so. But thank you so much for your time, and also thank you to the chat. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's gonna be interesting. Anytime you talk about the Chargers, you got to say it right. It's the Los Angeles Superchargers. That's an old song, in case you don't know.
Oh man, old songs and Jack. That's a match made in heaven.
No, but it's always fun coming on with you, Rohan. I appreciate you reaching out to me today and seeing if we could do this. Thursday nights are usually a slow night for me in terms of shows. It was either going to be go on here with Rohan and do a call-in show, and I chose you, so that's positive.
I feel happy now. Jack normally does not choose me. He normally really dislikes me. Like Jesse doesn't respond to my text. That's an issue, but Jack just flat out knows it and ignores me. So appreciate you, and yeah, have a good night, guys.
Take care, everybody.